If you keep opening your banking app and thinking, "Where did all my money go?" this is for you. Because if you don't fix this, you'll keep wiping out your paycheck on impulse nights, random buys, and subscriptions you don't even remember signing up for. Today I'll give you one line and a simple rule that help you spend by your values, not your moods. The part that will surprise you is where we slow down your reactions at the exact moment you want to swipe, without turning you into a financial robot or a doormat. If that sounds like something you need, stay with me. Your phone buzzes while you're standing in line at the grocery store, mentally adding up what's in your cart and hoping the total doesn't embarrass you at the register. You flip to your banking app, and there it is again, the sinking feeling as the numbers load and you realize that somehow, once again, the balance is way lower than you thought. You scroll through the recent transactions and see a blur of food delivery, random Amazon add-ons, quick coffee runs, and that subscription you forgot to cancel 3 months ago. You tell yourself, next month I'll get it together, but even as you think it, you don't quite believe it. It feels like your money has a mind of its own, and it doesn't seem very interested in what actually matters to you. Here's the uncomfortable truth: your spending is already a value system. It's just not the one you think you believe in. You might say you care about freedom, family, health, growth, or generosity, but your bank statement keeps voting for convenience, impulse, and numbing out after a long day. And that disconnect doesn't just cost you dollars. It eats away at your trust in yourself. Every time you promise to do better with money and then swipe your way through another week, a small part of you stops believing your own words. If nothing changes, you don't just risk overdraft fees or credit card interest. You risk carrying a quiet story that sounds like, "I'm just bad with money," even though that's not actually true. What's really happening is that your money has no map. Today, we're going to fix that. By the time we're done, you'll have 3 concrete things: a short, honest list of values that actually show up in your real life, a simple 50/30/20 check that helps you see if your spending roughly lines up with those values, and a weekly audit ritual that stops the bleeding before it turns into another "how did this happen" spiral. You'll know how to pause before a purchase, how to read your bank statement without shame, and how to make small, repeatable shifts that line your money up with what matters, not just how you feel in the moment. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. This whole lesson is inspired by a Stoic idea you see in people like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca: you judge what you care about not by what you say, but by where your time, attention, and energy go. Money is just another form of that. So first, we'll slow down enough to surface your real values and turn them into simple spending categories you can remember. Next, we'll pull up an honest snapshot of how your money is actually moving right now, without beating yourself up. Then, we'll run your numbers through a flexible 50/30/20 lens so you can see whether your spending is roughly in range or totally out of sync. After that, we'll design a simple money map for your month that tells every dollar where to go before it wanders off. Finally, we'll anchor everything with a weekly ritual that lets you adjust course in small, manageable ways instead of waiting for crises. At one point later, we'll walk through a specific Friday night moment where using this approach literally changes whether you wake up with buyer's remorse or a quiet sense of pride that you chose differently. You'll see how one little sentence you'll learn today can interrupt a whole lifetime pattern of spending from stress and fear. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. This isn't about turning you into a financial robot. It's about helping you feel calm, aligned, and in control when you look at your money, instead of stressed, ashamed, or confused. The first big shift is this: if you don't name your values, companies will happily rent your attention and name them for you. When you don't have a clear internal compass, every ad, every limited time sale, and every "you deserve this" message sneaks in and tells you what should matter right now. The micro stakes are simple but huge. When your spending isn't anchored in what you care about, you don't just lose money, you lose a sense of who you are. If you never change this, every month will feel like a fresh round of "where did it all go," even when your income rises. Here's why this matters so much. Your brain is wired to conserve energy. After a long day, it doesn't want to run a deep philosophical analysis every time you see something tempting. It wants shortcuts. Values give you those shortcuts. When you have 3 to 5 clear words that define what a good use of money looks like for you, your mind can filter decisions quickly. Instead of debating each purchase from scratch, you're quietly asking, does this serve freedom, health, family, growth, or generosity, or whatever your real values are? This is how a more grounded version of you responds instead of just reacting to every sale or dopamine hit. To make this practical, you need one exact line you can say to yourself whenever you're about to spend. It can sound like, I spend money in ways that support my top values, value 1, value 2, and value 3. Does this fit? You're not lecturing yourself. You're just putting the decision in front of your actual priorities instead of your momentary mood. Another simple line is, if I buy this, which value is it serving, and is that worth it? Imagine you're in a Canadian winter, scrolling on your couch after work in Toronto. You're exhausted, thumb deep in an online sale with big red countdown timers screaming only 2 hours left. Old you would think, I've had a rough week, I deserve something nice, and fill the cart with sweaters you don't really need. New you pauses, whispers, I spend money in ways that support my top values, health, freedom, and connection. Does this fit? You realize the purchase isn't really about any of those. What you actually want is comfort and relief from stress. Instead of dropping $120 on clothes, you decide to set up a low-cost Friday night with a friend and spend $8 on ingredients for a homemade hot chocolate night. You still treat yourself, but now the spending lines up with connection, not just numbing out. Your tiny action today is simple: write down 3 to 5 values that genuinely matter to you, without trying to impress anyone. Think about what you want your money to help you do. Maybe it's stability, experiences, learning, health, family, or generosity. Put those words somewhere you'll actually see them near your spending, saved as your phone's lock screen, on a sticky note inside your wallet, or as a pinned note on your laptop. The next sections will show you how to plug those values into your actual numbers. Hold on to that one sentence you tell yourself, does this fit my top values? Because later, when the pressure is high and your emotions are loud, that line is going to be what keeps your card in your pocket and your self-respect intact. The next shift is this: your bank and card statements are not a verdict on your character, they're just data. When you treat them like a morale report card, you avoid them, you guess, and you keep repeating the same patterns. The stakes here are straightforward. If you never learn to look at your numbers calmly, you stay in a fog. That fog is what lets subscriptions pile up, interest charges sneak in, and it's probably fine quietly turns into debt or constant money anxiety. Here's why this works when you do it differently. Your nervous system reacts to perceived threats, and for many people, money feels like a threat: childhood fights about bills, past mistakes, or that one time you overdrafted and felt humiliated. So your brain links looking at my accounts with feeling bad. The Stoic move is to separate the event from the emotion. The statement is neutral. Your interpretation makes it heavy. When you intentionally frame it as data I'm in charge of, your brain gradually learns that checking your accounts is safe and useful, not shameful. You need one line to break that old association. Try saying, this is not a judgment, it's just information, and I can work with information. Another line you can use is, looking at my money is an act of self-respect, not punishment. Say it out loud right before you open your banking app or credit card site, even if it feels cheesy at first. Picture a Wednesday night in a small apartment in Denver. You're sitting at your kitchen table with your laptop open, half tempted to just watch something and forget the whole money thing for another week. Old you would close the banking tab the second that tightness in your chest showed up. Now you keep the tab open, put one hand flat on the table, and say quietly, this is not a judgment, it's just information, and I can work with information. You log in, filter the last 30 days, and instead of spiraling, you just categorize. Food delivery. Gas. Rent. Random stuff. You notice that food delivery alone is almost as much as your car payment. That stings, but you stay with the data. You're not a failure, you're just finally seeing the pattern. Your tiny action here is concrete: pull up your main checking account and your primary credit card and export or write down your last 30 days of transactions. Don't fix anything yet. Just highlight or mark anything that clearly doesn't match the values you wrote down earlier. That might be the third streaming service you never watch, the daily $7 coffees, or the midnight I couldn't sleep so I bought things orders. Your only job is to see the map of where your money actually goes. Keep this practice in mind: because in a bit we'll plug these real numbers into a simple 50/30/20 check so you can see where things are roughly on track and where they're quietly drifting away from what matters. Now we layer in a structure that many people have heard of, but few use wisely, the 50/30/20 framework. The claim is not that this is some magic formula. It's that using it as a flexible fit check helps you see whether your money even has enough room to reflect your values. If you just wing it based on vibes, you'll keep wondering why you're stressed even when you technically earn enough. If you never do this check, you might blame yourself for lack of discipline when the real issue is that your fixed costs are already eating everything. The reason this model helps is that your brain likes simple ratios more than complicated spreadsheets. Roughly, the idea is that about 50% of your take-home income goes to needs, about 30% to wants, and about 20% to savings, debt payoff, and future you. The point isn't to hit those exact numbers overnight. The point is to see where you are now so you can make intentional adjustments. From a Stoic angle, this is about living within what Epictetus would call your sphere of control, knowing your limits and operating wisely inside them, rather than fantasizing about a life that doesn't match your current reality. To make this usable in real life, give yourself one plain sentence you can repeat: I'm using 50/30/20 as a reality check, not a rulebook. That line keeps you from turning this into another rigid standard to beat yourself up with. You can also say, these percentages are a flashlight, not a judge. Imagine you live in Chicago, earning $4,000 a month after taxes. You sit down with your statement and start sorting. Rent, utilities, and basic groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, those are needs. Eating out, entertainment, non-essential shopping, and subscriptions, those go into wants. Extra payments toward debt, money you move into savings or investments, that's the future you. When you add it up, you realize your needs are at 65%, wants are at 25%, and in the future you are barely getting 10%. Old you might say, see, I suck at money. New you, anchored by that line, I'm using 50/30/20 as a reality check, not a rulebook, takes a breath and says, okay, my needs are crowding everything. No wonder I feel squeezed. What can I tweak over the next 3 months to slowly bring that 65 down and the 10 up, without pretending I live in a fantasy world? Your tiny action is to take your last full month of net income, calculate those 3 rough buckets, and compare them to the 50/30/20 lens. Don't chase perfection. Just ask, which number is loudest right now? Is it that your needs are too high, your wants are eating your future, or your future bucket is starving? Circle or mark the one that clearly needs attention. That's where your next shift will come from. Hold that insight, because in a moment we'll move from looking at past behavior to giving each upcoming dollar a job before it even hits your account, which is where your money map really starts to come alive. The next claim is simple: if you don't tell your money where to go before you get it, your habits and emotions will assign it a job the moment it lands. That's why paydays can feel like a brief high followed by confusion 2 weeks later. The stakes are clear. Without a forward-looking plan, you stay stuck reacting to bills and impulses, which keeps you in a cycle of putting out fires instead of quietly building stability and freedom. This works because your brain is much calmer when it knows there's a plan, even if the numbers are tight. A basic monthly money map uses your paydays as anchors and predecides what each chunk of income will cover. It's not a hyper-detailed budget with 20 categories. It's more like a calendar plus a checklist. Here's when income comes in, here's which bills and values it covers, and here's what's left for flexible spending. Seneca, in his letters, talks about rehearsing poverty so he's never shocked by it. In the same spirit, a money map rehearses your month on paper so the real thing doesn't blindside you. You need one straightforward sentence you can use whenever a paycheck lands. Something like, every dollar that hits my account gets a job before I spend it. Or, payday is planning day, not impulse day. Say it as you open your banking app on your next payday. Picture a nurse in Seattle who gets paid every 2 weeks. Old pattern: deposit hits, she feels relief, then immediately orders takeout, buys a few things online, and promises to figure out the rest later. Later comes with a late fee. New pattern: she reminds herself, every dollar that hits my account gets a job before I spend it. She opens a simple note on her phone where she's written out her month, fixed bills like rent, car, insurance, phone, flexible but essential spending like groceries and gas, and value-based categories like learning, experiences, or giving. When the paycheck lands, she allocates, this amount goes to rent and utilities, this amount to groceries and gas, this amount to extra debt payment, this sliver to a small fund but aligned fund. Only after those transfers and allocations happen does she let herself decide on anything extra. Your tiny action today is to grab a calendar for the next 30 days and mark your paydays, your main bills' due dates, and any larger predictable expenses. Then, for your next paycheck, write a simple plan that lists where that specific money will go in 3 or 4 lines: fixed bills, essentials, future you, and aligned wants. You're not locking yourself into a prison. You're making a promise to your future self that at least some of your money will go where you actually want your life to go. Keep this habit close, because soon we'll connect it back to your values list so that when you do spend on wants, they're not random, they're deliberate expressions of who you're becoming. Here's the next big idea: most bad spending isn't evil, it's just unconsidered. The problem isn't that you buy coffee, sneakers, or concert tickets. It's that you do it on autopilot, without asking whether it fits the story you're trying to live. The stakes of never changing this are subtle but painful. You keep waking up to a life that doesn't look like the one you talk about. You say you care about travel, but your money keeps going to things that end up in a drawer. You say you want to be generous, but you never seem to have anything left to give. This works differently when you use a tiny pause and a values filter in the moment. Behaviorally, most impulses fade within a minute or two if you don't feed them. When you insert a small question into that window and connect the purchase to your values and your money map, you're retraining your brain to route decisions through your long-term self instead of your tired, stressed, or bored self. From a Stoic angle, you're practicing what Marcus Aurelius would call examining impressions, stopping to ask whether something is truly good for you or just appears attractive right now. Give yourself one exact line to use in stores, on apps, and on your laptop. It could be, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to that I care about more? Or, does this purchase still feel right when I remember my values and my money map? Say it quietly before you hit buy now, tap your card, or walk to the register. Imagine a Friday afternoon in Austin. You're walking through Target just to grab a few things, and suddenly you're standing in front of a shelf with home decor that would look amazing on your feed. Old you would feel a little rush, toss 3 items into the cart, and figure it out later. New you, pushing the cart, stops for 10 seconds and thinks, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to that I care about more? You remember that one of your values is travel, and you promised yourself you'd build a small weekend getaway fund. You leave one item in the cart that you truly love and put the other 2 back. That simple choice keeps $40 aligned with your values instead of drifting away into impulse land. Your tiny action is to pick one spending context where you often act on autopilot. Maybe it's online shopping late at night, in-app purchases, or grabbing snacks at gas stations, and commit that for the next week, you'll always use your one sentence before every purchase in that context. Not every purchase needs a dramatic pause. Just that one repeat pattern is enough to start rewiring the habit. Hold on to this, because later, when we step into that Friday night story, this exact question is going to be the thing that flips the script on an old pattern of regret spending. Another critical shift is this: misaligned spending often needs friction, not just willpower. If every path to buying something is oiled and effortless, your values don't stand a chance against tiredness and clever marketing. The stakes here are that, without intentional friction, you'll underestimate how often you just tapped it or only spent a little, and those tiny leaks will quietly sink the bigger things you care about. This works because the environment beats intention in the long run. Your brain is constantly scanning for the easiest available action. If buying something is one click away, and saving or paying down debt takes 10 steps, you know which one your nervous system will default to when you're drained. A Stoic way to see this is that you're shaping your circumstances so that virtue, acting in line with your values, requires less effort than impulsiveness. You need one specific line to remind yourself that friction is a tool, not a punishment. Try, I make it easy to live my values and harder to sabotage them. Or, if this really matters, it can wait 24 hours. That second line doubles as a micro rule. Picture someone in Vancouver who always ends up late night scrolling and making random purchases. Old pattern: the phone is in bed, the cards are saved on every site, and there's no delay between I want it and it's ordered. New pattern: they decide, I make it easy to live my values and harder to sabotage them. They remove saved cards from shopping sites, set up a separate fun account with a capped amount each month, and make a personal rule that any purchase over $50 has to go through a 24-hour waiting period. One night, they find a gadget for $80 that looks perfect. Old they would have hit by now. New they adds it to a 24-hour list instead. The next evening, they recheck the item and realize it doesn't matter nearly as much as it did the night before. The urge has passed, and the $80 stays available for something that actually fits their priorities. Your tiny action is to choose one friction move today. That might be deleting a shopping app from your phone, turning off one-click ordering, unsubscribing from promotional emails that always trigger you, or setting a 24-hour list note on your phone for non-urgent purchases over a certain amount. Don't overhaul everything at once. Just pick one lever that makes misaligned spending even a little slower. Keep this in mind, because when we enter the weekly audit ritual soon, any friction you've built will make it way easier to adjust your course instead of just noticing problems and feeling stuck. Here's another key idea: your money doesn't just express your values, it also shapes them. Repeated spending in a direction strengthens that part of your identity. If most of your extra money goes to random stuff, you train yourself to see your life as a series of momentary hits instead of a coherent story. The stakes are real. If you never direct some money into identity-building categories, you might wake up 5 years from now with a closet full of things and very few memories, skills, or relationships that feel deeply meaningful. This works because your brain needs evidence to believe a new story about who you are. Every time you invest even a small amount of money in something that matches your values, like learning, health, relationships, or contribution, you're sending yourself a signal: this is the kind of person I am. Over time, those signals accumulate. The Stoics knew this in a different context. They talked about building character one small action at a time. Here, you're doing it with dollars. You can give yourself one anchoring line: I spend at least some money every month becoming who I want to be. Or, even small amounts invested in my values count. This shifts the focus from I don't have enough to do anything meaningful to what can I do with what I have. Imagine a guy in Detroit who says he values growth and health but feels stuck. Old pattern: whenever he gets a little extra money, it goes to takeout, drinks, or gadgets. New pattern: he repeats, I spend at least some money every month becoming who I want to be. He decides that even if it's just $30, some portion of every month will go to a value-based category. One month it's a used book that actually stretches his thinking, another month it's a class at a local gym, another month it's contributing to a friend's fundraiser. None of these break the bank, but over time, when he looks back, he sees a trail of receipts that tell a story he's proud of, not just random consumption. Your tiny action here is to choose one identity-supporting category that matches a top value, maybe learning, health, connection, or contribution, and decide on a minimum amount you'll route there next month, even if it's small. It might be $10 into a travel envelope, $20 toward a course, or $15 toward a monthly coffee with a friend you want to stay close to. Put that in your money map so it's not just a vague intention. Hold on to this habit, because when we get to the weekly audit, you'll start looking not only at what you want to reduce, but also at what you want to protect and keep funding because it's part of your future story. Now we arrive at the engine that keeps all of this from fading after a week: the weekly audit ritual. The claim is straightforward. Without a recurring check-in, your money will drift no matter how good your intentions are. The stakes, again, are quiet but heavy. If you live month to month with no small, regular course corrections, you only notice problems when they've already become crises, and that keeps your nervous system in emergency mode instead of pilot mode. This works because small, consistent reviews are easier on your brain than big, occasional overhauls. If you spend 10 to 15 minutes once a week reviewing your spending, you're training yourself to see money as something you can interact with calmly and frequently. You're also catching patterns early. From a Stoic perspective, this is like the evening reflection some of them practiced, asking, what did I do? What did I do badly? What could I do differently, but doing it with your dollars? You need one clear sentence to cue this ritual. Something like, every week, I have a calm money check-in with myself. Or, my weekly audit is maintenance, not punishment. Say it as you sit down to do it. Imagine a Sunday evening in a small apartment in Boston. Old life: Sunday nights meant scrolling, dreading Monday, and vague anxiety about how things are going. New life: you grab your laptop, light a candle or make a cup of tea, and open your bank app. You say, every week, I have a calm money check-in with myself. For 10 minutes, you look at last week's transactions. You ask 3 questions. Did I spend in line with my values at least some of the time? Where did I drift? What's one small adjustment I can make for this coming week? You see that delivery crept up again, so you decide to cap it and plan one simple meal you can make quickly instead. You also notice you actually put $20 into your learning category, and you give yourself credit for that. Your tiny action is to pick a specific day and rough time for your weekly audit and put a repeating reminder on your phone. Don't leave it to chance. Maybe it's Saturday morning with coffee, Sunday night, or right after your Friday workday ends. When that reminder goes off, your only requirement is 10 minutes. Over time, that 10-minute habit will do more for your relationship with money than any single big push. Keep this weekly ritual in mind, because we're about to walk into a detailed Friday night scenario where you'll see exactly how this combination of values, money mapping, friction, and weekly reviews shows up in real time when the stakes feel high and your emotions are loud. It's a late Friday night in January, and you're in your apartment in Minneapolis. Snow is piled against the window, the streetlights outside blur a bit through the glass, and your body feels like one long exhale after a brutal week at work. Your phone buzzes on the coffee table. It's your group chat, 3 friends you love, but who tend to spend money like the rest of the month doesn't exist. The newest message is a photo of a rooftop bar, all glowing heaters and cocktails, with a caption, "Spontaneous night out? Let's forget this week ever happened. Uber and drinks, let's go." Old you would already be halfway to the closet, mentally calculating how many drinks you could sort of afford if you just didn't think about your card balance until later. Old you spent money on nights like this as a way to kill the leftover stress, then woke up with receipts and a headache, scrolling through your banking app with a knot in your stomach. Tonight, there's a pause. Not because your life suddenly became easy, but because you've spent the last few weeks naming your values, mapping your money, adding a little friction, and doing that weekly Sunday audit. You pick up your phone and look at the picture again. For a moment, the old script tries to take over. You deserve this. It's just one night. You can figure it out later. Your thumb hovers over the rideshare app. Then you hear your own sentence cut in. If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to that I care about more? You remember your values list, freedom, connection, and health, and the note in your money map that says you set aside a specific fun but aligned amount for the month. You opened your banking app earlier today as part of a quick Friday check, so you know exactly how much is left in your flexible fund category without touching the rent or the extra payment you promised yourself you'd send to your credit card. You open your banking app again, just to stay grounded. This is not a judgment, it's just information, and I can work with information, you murmur. You see that, yes, technically, you could afford an Uber plus a couple of drinks if you're careful. But you also see that doing that would pretty much wipe out the last of your flexible money for the month, and your cousin's birthday is next weekend, something you decided mattered to you. You take a breath, noticing the tug-of-war between wanting immediate relief and wanting that longer-term freedom you keep talking about. Your finger drifts toward the rideshare app again, and this time the friction you built into your life kicks in. You'd removed your saved card from the app last week and set a rule for yourself: any unplanned outing over a certain amount goes on a 24-hour list. You glance at that note on your phone. The rule doesn't mean you never go, it just means you don't go without thinking. You flip back to the group chat and type, "I'm tempted, but I'm watching my money this month harder than usual. Could we do something cheaper, like a game night here tomorrow? I can make snacks and a big pot of chile." Old you would have felt embarrassed to send that, afraid of being the boring or broke one. Now you feel a small, quiet pride. You're not apologizing for having priorities. You're inviting connections on different terms. There's a pause in the chat. Your stomach twists a bit. You consider deleting the message. Then one friend replies, "Honestly, I'm relieved you said that. My card's a mess right now." Another chimes in, "Same. Let's do the chill version at your place. I'll bring a game and dessert." The last friend sends a joking meme about getting old and responsible, and the tension in your chest eases. You just protected both your money and your value of connection in the same move. You head to your kitchen and look at what you already have in your cabinets. Instead of ordering takeout, you pull together a simple grocery list for tomorrow that fits your money map. As you jot it down, that other sentence returns: I spend at least some money every month becoming who I want to be. You think about using a bit of your learning category next week to buy that book on investing you've been eyeing, instead of pretending you'll figure it out someday through osmosis. Before bed, you take 2 minutes to open your notes app and write a quick reflection, like a mini version of your weekly audit. Tonight I almost defaulted to old spending, but I used my pause question and my friction rule, you type. I still get to see my friends, but I didn't blow up my money map. This is what financial freedom actually feels like in the moment, not glamorous, but solid. You close your phone, turn off the light, and lie there in the dark. There's still stress in your life. Your income hasn't magically doubled. But under the noise, there's a sense of alignment that didn't exist a month ago. The next Sunday, when your weekly audit reminder buzzes, you sit down with your bank app, your values list taped to the side of your laptop, and your calendar. Every week, I have a calm money check-in with myself, you say. You notice that yes, you spent less on random nights out and more on groceries and a few deliberate treats. You also see the small transfer you made to your future you category. You're not perfect. You don't need to be. You're becoming the kind of person whose money quietly tells the same story their mouth does, and that is the real win. What we've really been doing in this lesson is moving you from a money life driven by vibes and impulses to a money life driven by values and intention. Instead of letting your bank statement surprise you every month, you're learning to see it as a mirror of what you actually care about and then adjusting that reflection on purpose. You're shifting from reacting to every urge, ad, and invite to responding from a clear sense of who you are and where you're going. First, we sat together in that moment in the grocery line and named the real pain, not just low balances, but the gap between what you say matters and what your money actually does. From there, you identified 3 to 5 core values and turned them into a lens for your spending, using a simple line to check whether a purchase fits the kind of life you want to build. Then we took the heat out of your numbers by treating your statements as information, not moral judgments, and you practiced opening your accounts with a calm script instead of a shame spiral. Next, you run your real income and expenses through a flexible 50/30/20 lens, not as a rigid rule, but as a quick snapshot of where your needs, wants, and future focus are out of balance. After that, you drew a monthly money map that anchored your decisions to your paydays, your bills, and your values, so that paydays became planning days instead of impulse festivals. You learned to pause before purchases with one small question about what you'd be saying no to, and to add healthy friction around misaligned spending so your environment supports your values instead of sabotaging them. Then we zoomed out and talked about how your money doesn't just express your identity, it shapes it. You started routing at least some dollars each month toward identity building categories, even in small amounts, so that your receipts begin to tell a story you actually like. After that, we built the weekly audit ritual, a 10-minute, calm review that turns all of these ideas into a living habit instead of a one-time burst of motivation. Finally, we walked through that Friday night scenario, where all of this came together and you chose connection and alignment over automatic, regret-filled spending. Now it's time to anchor this in 3 things you can do today. First, take 5 minutes to write down 3 to 5 values that really matter to you and put them somewhere you'll see them when you spend: on your phone lock screen, in your wallet, or pinned on your laptop. Second, open your main checking account and primary card, look at the last 30 days of transactions, and highlight or mark anything that clearly doesn't match those values, reminding yourself, this is not a judgment, it's just information, and I can work with information. Third, pick a time in the next 7 days for a 10-minute weekly money audit, set a repeating reminder, and when it goes off, sit down and calmly ask, where was I aligned this week, where did I drift, and what one small adjustment can I make for the week ahead? If this resonated with you, the natural next step is to go deeper into how to create a simple emergency buffer and emergency fund that actually reduces anxiety instead of just being another overwhelming financial buzzword. Think of a lesson like the Calm Cushion, building a simple emergency fund without hating your life, where we'd break down how to start tiny, stay consistent, and protect yourself from the most common financial shocks. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The more you practice spending by values instead of vibes, the more your money becomes a quiet, steady ally in building the life you actually want, one decision at a time.